Hello, it's Joanna Hunter here for the Into the LightWeb Podcast. And on today's episode, we are going to be extending our last week's podcast, which was all about agent illness. And we've had a load of questions on our social media, and we thought it would be really, really fun this week to get into some of the questions because Skylar has a lot to teach us on agent illness and also as well how things manifest in the body temple. And some of these questions that we have received are super juicy. So let's get into it. Hey, and a very warm welcome to the Into the LightWeb podcast with me, your hostess, Joanna Hunter, metaphysical teacher, spiritual life and business coach, published author, and the high priestess of the LightWeb, a spiritual technology that will change your life. This is the place to be to talk everything under the LightWeb, from consciousness, relationships, to money, to spiritual business, and everything in between. Hey, and a warm welcome to this week's episode. So in this episode, we are going to go through, we've had three kind of different questions, and we're going to go through each question one at a time. So the first question that we've had is from Susie Flynn. And Susie Flynn writes that she has had a lot of abdominal issues and gut issues. And she is asking, what does that kind of mean? And we thought it would be quite good to dive into that because I know a lot of people have gut issues and abdominal issues. And it's very interesting to see what Skylar says about gut and abdominal issues. So first and foremost, I want to just write a disclaimer. First and foremost, I am no medical professional. I am not a medical doctor, and I am not licensed to give medical advice. So this show is for entertainment purposes only. And please do seek your own research and your own advice and go and see medical professionals if you are suffering with any medical ailments. Super, super, super important. So what I want to dive into on Susie's question here, I am just going to read that question out and then we can get into what this is all about. So Susie has written to us and she says, I have a lot of gastro issues from bloating like every single day, constipation, distension, trapped wind, and I would love to know what my body is trying to tell me. What can't I let go of? I do EFT and tapping on this a lot, and it has helped, but I would love to understand more about the metaphysical meaning behind and how to release it for the good, as it plagues my life and creates fear around eating times. Well, girlfriend, I feel you. I've had a lot of gut issues myself. So our gut is responsible for our digestion. So that part is a bit of a no-brainer. But what we think is that our gut only digests food. What Skylar teaches is that our gut also digests a bunch of other things. So our gut digests everything. So how are we digesting life? Often when people have gut issues, what Skylar teaches is that they usually belong to the highly sensitive. So highly sensitive people have gut issues often. And the reason is because they are maybe struggling with digesting life as it is, right? We live in a world that has both light and dark, has both source and void energy in it. And sometimes when we're exposed as a person to a lot of void energy, what happens is that we start to get gastral issues, not just because basically we've got a kind of lack of light there in our tummies. And so often when I hear of clients who have got tummy issues, I usually know that I'm dealing with some type of empath. And it's safe for me to begin to like really go down that route of realizing I probably have somebody who is a very highly sensitive person. Whether they project that outwardly or not just depends on their own life experiences, whether they project that they're a highly sensitive person or they use the energy that I call the I'm all right, Jack energy. So it's like where they built a wall and you would never tell that that person was maybe highly sensitive. So what you want to make sure is that when you are working with gut issues, you've got to understand it's about how you're digesting life. And what I suggest is not only doing a physical detox of where you're detoxing your gut and really working with the gut biome in your gut. But the other thing as well that I think is also to do an environmental detox. So that's really thinking about what are you looking at? What are you consuming on social media? What are you consuming in general? What are you consuming from the media? What are you consuming from social media? What are you consuming on television? All of these things can actually be stored in the body temple. And if we're watching a lot of harsh stuff and we have a highly attuned empathic system, what happens is that our system very easily gets overloaded, and therefore we start to have problems with digestion, which then manifests in the body temple as real problems with digestion. We start having sensitivities and issues with digesting food, especially anything that is low vibrational or farmed in a low vibrational way. So, which is why gluten intolerance and dairy intolerance can be so high, because both of those are farmed in quite dodgy farming practices. There's lots of chemical sprayed on our wheat these days. And then obviously in the dairy industry, it's none too pleasant in there too. So this can have massive bearing on how we're digesting life. One of the other things that's really, really important is when you have got gastral issues, according to Skylar, is that you have plenty of nature time, that you are spending a lot of time in nature to help rebalance yourself. And actually, Skylar also really say that it's really good to dig your garden if you've got gut issues. So not only if you think about being down on your knees, digging your garden, and you're bent over, and it's very close to a yoga pose called child pose. Child pose is really, really good for the gut. And it's really good for restoring the energy and the balance within the gut as well. When we're digging in the earth as well, from a scientific point of view. So every time Skylar tells me something, I usually Google and investigate, why did they say this? Is there any science behind this? And one of the things that I discovered about Skylar saying, dig the garden, be in the garden if you've got gut issues and things. So not only sitting in that position of kind of kneeling down, digging in your flower beds, which was the image that I was given, not only does that start to stimulate the vagus nerve through your central nervous system. So when you're in child pose, that's what is being stimulated there. And that helps to stimulate your gut and probably promote healing. Second of all, as well, the earth releases pheromones that helps to calm the central nervous system. So if you've got a nervous system that's highly empathic, highly intuitive, what's happened is that you are not just absorbing your life stuff and you're having to digest your life. As a highly empathic person, you tend to probably be absorbing other people's lives as well as your own. So it's really important to detox on a regular basis. And then on another aspect is having spiritual care as well. So things like Himalayan salt baths, Epsom salt baths, or like detox baths can be really beneficial as well for helping and stimulating promotion of health within your gut if you're highly sensitive. Many people, there is a direct link and correlation between being empathic and also having trauma in childhood. So really working on early childhood trauma and bringing a feeling of safety back into the body is really, really important as well. And these things are, best left for professional counselors or professional therapists who can help you work through anything like that if that is the case for you. So hopefully for Susie, that answers her question. So our next question comes from Ashley. And she says, I really love this episode. So that was last week's episode. And if you haven't listened to that, go check it out. I'm dealing with a health challenge now. I'm curious, what does Skylar say about children with health issues? A friend of a friend's 18-month-old was just diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I can understand every soul is on its journey, but how does agent illness serve in this case? Okay. So if we're referencing last week's episode, so if you didn't hear last week's episode all about agent illness, so the universe basically sends you 3 agents when you start to move out of alignment with source. So the first agent they send you is from the emotional branch. The second agent that they send you is from the outer branch. So that is people, places, and situations that trigger you. And the third agent that is sent to help you back into alignment is agent illness. So this question is really interesting because basically, how can a 18-month have moved so far out of alignment that they have begun to code for agent illness? Because it tends to be the last agent that the universe sends you. So from a human perspective, and it's everything is levels of consciousness. From a human level of consciousness and perspective, makes no sense why a child would get cancer, and it's extremely distressing for the family to go through this. And my thoughts, my prayers are with them. From a soul self, so a higher perspective, soul self perspective, works on the principle of the soul is immortal and it lives forever, so that there is no such thing as death. And therefore, it views everything in life as an experience. Human perspective does not view everything as an experience. Human perspective views everything in a very literal life or death lens, because the fact that a human body can pass away and the spirit be released and move on into the spirit world, it seems very finite. So it works and operates in the field of being very, very finite in its perspective. In soul perspective, we have this much bigger picture of where everything is an experience, and every experience teaches us something about ourselves or our immortal soul. It is there for the evolution of the immortal soul. But here's where things get really interesting. When we have a child like this who gets agent illness, comes in a much earlier time in life, sometimes what happens is that souls come in and do service for other people. Now, on a human perspective, this is just never going to make sense. What's it going to be like to say to those parents, oh, hey, it's okay. Your kid's just doing you a solid there to help you on some bigger, grander spiritual thing. Most people would be like, well, I'd just rather not go through this. And I fully understand that and I fully accept that. But from a soul perspective, from the perspective of there is no death, there is only a continuation of life, and that the physical world is illusionary in itself, from that perspective, we can begin to see that agent cancer in this time can be a teacher for everybody involved. What is it bringing up for the parents of this child? If the child has siblings, what is it bringing up for the siblings, the grandparents? We can see how many people are being impacted by this event. And each person that is being impacted by this event is being given and offered different choices, the choices on how to handle it. You can hear sometimes when you hear about people who have received agent illness, whether they're a child or an adult, everybody reacts in a different way. And again, this is an opportunity for deep spiritual growth, and it's an opportunity to learn. So sometimes agent illness, and remember, everything is to move you into a deeper connection with source. Everything is to move you into deeper connection with source. The other thing that we need to note here as well, from a spiritual perspective, and we teach a lot of this in LightWeb, and we go into this a lot, is that a lot of us, we come in intermeshed in soul groups. So we come in as a big soul group. So what happens is that your children have often been part of your soul group before. It's very rare that children will be brand new to that soul group. Often children have been incarnating as different avatars and different people in your life before. You also, as well, your parents, everybody within that group of souls have been playing different roles. So in one lifetime, you were an aunt, in another lifetime, you were a mother, in another lifetime, you were maybe a child. And this happens again and again and again. And that's so that we can gain greater perspective as a soul group, as a collective consciousness, which is what Skylar is. Skylar is my soul group, and I'm one of the last living people who are actually physically in the physical world with Skylar. So Skylar are unincarnated members of my soul group, and we all come together in these soul groups. And as we come together in these soul groups, what happens is that we learn different things. And you remember, you are in looking through the lens of the soul, which lives forever. So a situation like this can throw up quite a lot of interesting concepts and ideas for a soul group to work with and to use for their evolution and expansion. On a human perspective, I have nothing but empathy, and my heart goes out to this family that are dealing with this absolutely really devastating diagnosis that's really difficult. And, but here's the thing, healing can happen in an instant, and it's all, it's all there. But even if the healing does not occur, understand that from a higher perspective, life continues. And perhaps this is also, there's so much service, and it's hard to comment on what would be the service in this situation. However, and none of it is going to make any sense to the human part of us whatsoever. Yes, it will make sense if we can allow ourselves to be at soul perspective and realize that life continues. But we come in and we play different roles. And who's to say that this baby isn't an enlightened being from the soul group that has arrived into this family's life from a higher perspective of the gift of cancer, in a way, to help create a shift in consciousness with these people. We don't know this. And this is one of the things with being human beings, is that we don't get to know this often, but we can always work on our vibration and learning to higher our vibration to higher levels where these things might make a little bit more sense and a little bit more easier to walk with. I know for myself, as my consciousness has highered, things and concepts like death, immortality, mortality, illness, things like that have been a lot easier to deal with from a higher perspective than being in a lower, more human frequency of where it makes no sense whatsoever. And, I remember pondering this when I was a lot younger. Why is it that good people die, and why is it sometimes that bad people seem to thrive? And these were things that I really pondered a lot when I was younger. And as my consciousness has highered, and I realized that from the perspective of, looking at something like this as cancer in somebody's life, I think sometimes looking at that through the lens of a human, it is very hard, very difficult, and very devastating. From a soul perspective, we can begin to see how many different choices are spinning out, how many different things are created from this situation. So, it isn't just a one-trick pony here in life. It is bigger, and sometimes little avatars, little 18-month-old avatars come in here with a disease like cancer for the expansion of soul evolution for an entire group of people. And so all of it is here to help us with our connection to source. So hopefully that answers your question, Ashley, and thank you so much for asking it, because it was such an interesting question. So the next question I have is from a lady. So I'm not identify this lady because she didn't actually give me permission to say it out on social media, although she did ask the question on social media. So I won't say her name, but she said, what about multifaceted issues? I started to get help to heal a dislocated jaw, and now I'm experiencing very disturbing eye issues. The doctor has changed my prescription several times this year, and my eyesight keeps going back and forth. Very disturbing, and it gives me a lot of anxiety, especially before driving. On top of that, my right ear muscle behind the ear is always extremely tight and makes my ear ring. Any insights to this would be greatly appreciated. So, all of these issues have one thing in common, and apart from you, but the one thing that all of these issues have in common is that they seem to be all happening to the face. So we have an ear issue, we have a jaw issue, we have an eye issue. We are all in the head with this, right? So this tells me immediately that these issues belong to someone who spends a lot of time in their head. This tells me that this is most likely a person that is overthinking a lot of things and overthinking often. So we're all in the mind, we're all in the head. And this is why there is certain issues that we're literally not seeing clearly, which is why we have started to manifest literally eye disturbances. But there also seems to me like there may be an issue that we are not hearing properly either, which again is why we maybe have got ear issues here. And then the jaw issue as well is, if you think about, the body is very, very literal. It's like what you see is what you get. We used to have this old TV show here in the UK called Catchphrase, and they would have like this little thing and you had to say what you see, and that's literally how the body and illness within the body often manifests. It's like, say what you see. And so with the clenching of the jaw, we know that we will like think about issues that cause jaw clenching, right? So not just medical issues, but like when we're not speaking our truth, when we're holding things within, when we're pissed at things, we can end up clenching our jaw and create the tightness there. So it feels to me like there is a lot of issues, and all of the issues for me personally stem here in this from the mind being overactive. And I feel like this is why we're maybe not seeing things clearly, hearing things clearly, and why we're also feeling maybe a lot of tension and feeling really, really pissed off. The first place that I'm being taken to is the neck. So this is me tuning into this problem and tuning into this energy. And so Skylar immediately highlights the neck of this person, the neck and the shoulders, and it tells me that there is an underlying neck and shoulder issue. So when there's a neck and shoulder issue, what I say to people is, what is causing a pain in the neck to you? And that's a brilliant question in this situation to journal. What is a pain in the neck to you? And it can be anything. That is probably causing a physical element that's beginning to jam up everything in the neck. And therefore, we're then having this cascade of other issues from the jaw to the ear to the eye. All of it is muscular in nature is what I feel. And again, I'm not a doctor. I cannot prescribe. I cannot tell you what is medically wrong with you, but I can tell you on a metaphysical level what I am picking up. And this is what I'm picking up in this issue, that is stemming from the neck. I would really be looking at what is a pain in the neck to you and how can you begin to correct that energy. So that may be people, places, and situations. It's always really difficult to navigate and move ourselves back into alignment, especially if there's other people involved and that we're maybe not too happy being in their company and being in their area. And one of the biggest things that we fear as human beings is the fear of confrontation. So we avoid it at all costs. But what happens is that we then begin to internalize energy. And as we begin to internalize energy, it starts to build in the body tempo till the point that it becomes literally an agent of the universe. And the agent illness is both an outer and inner agent. So the first branch is an inner branch. It's our emotions. I don't feel good. That's the first indication that something is causing you to divorce your energy from source energy. And it's your indication that you are now moving away from source energy. The next agent is the outer branch. Now, the outer branch of agents usually often look like they're not connected to the inner branch. It could be that person that's triggering you, really, really annoying you, really upsetting you, and you feel like it's got nothing to do with you. But remember, there was always the first agent. The first agent was the emotional branch of I don't feel good. So it could be that you're not in alignment with the situation that you've been in. And therefore, you then start to code as you ignore that, not moving your energy or not being in choice, basically. Because we can choose to be somewhere where we don't like it very much. But if it is our conscious choice, the universe respects that and does not require to send you agents. When it is not a conscious choice, and we maybe have stories attached like, I can't get out of this situation, I can't leave this situation, the universe will send agents. So then as we go through, when we get to the final agent, which is agent illness, and when things are manifesting in the body temple, what is really going on in that situation is at that point in time, the body is literally, and both an inner, because you're feeling your elements inside, but you're also manifesting your elements outside, which means that doctors or nurses and people like that, medical professionals, can actually often see your symptoms, or they show up on tests, or they show up on things. So it's both an inner and outer. So we go inner, and outer together. Is at the end. So when we're at this stage of agent illness, remember, agent illness is not your enemy. The agents are never your enemy. They are just simply a messenger from the divine. They have literally been sent to you to be a messenger. So that's whether, you have sickness and illness yourself, or things that are not quite functioning the way that they should be in your body, or whether you have a little messenger that is only 18 months old, as that comes up in your life. So it's really, really important to understand that none of this is coming from a personal level. I do not believe in illness as punishment. So there is some spiritual teachers out there that teach that illness is some form of like karmic punishment. Karma, to me personally, is a beloved teacher. It spins on its own axis. It is literally coming from Skylar's teachings of monkey see, monkey do. So monkey see is basically as you do, as you see it, you do it, right? So basically what that means is that the universe is a mirror of you. And that is how karma works as well. And then karma actually transcends and works over timelines. So you are currently in your timeline right now, but you have past life timelines and future life timelines that are completely different lifetimes, different bodies, different avatars. And karma works across all of those timelines as well. I do not believe that agent illness is a karmic thing. I believe that often what karma is a beloved teacher to teach us on higher levels of consciousness and help to encourage us into higher levels of understanding and consciousness. Same as the agents, they are here to help us with our consciousness and invite us into higher levels of consciousness of seeing a kind of bigger and brighter picture. So hopefully that makes sense. And thank you, ladies, for those questions. If you have a question for Ask Joanna and Skylar, just simply go to www.joannahunter.com/ask. And you can fill in the little form there to ask your question for the Ask Joanna and Skylar series on this podcast. I will speak to you guys soon. Take care. Lots and lots of love. Bye now.